Hey there, school transportation. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm Tony Corpin, publisher of School Transportation News. This episode is brought to you by TransFinder, the leader in school bus routing software. Also, we have a special interview with our friends at Zonar.
Hey everyone, this is Ryan Gray, Editor-in-Chief of School Transportation News. We have a couple exciting guests today. First, Kevin Mest, Senior Vice President and General Manager of Passenger Services at Zonar. We'll be talking with Tony. And then a little bit later, I'll be speaking with Casey Jo Foster, who's the Director of Transportation at Birmingham City Schools in Alabama.
All right, Ryan, I think the industry is rejoicing. The COVID bill has passed the stimulus and schools are going to benefit to the tune of $130 billion for K through 8. You want to break down kind of where everything landed on that?
Yeah, so actually the grand total that K through 12 is getting is $128,554,800,000. So we got to still wait and see exactly how transportation is going to get some of these funds. Just kind of a cursory look at it. There's not a lot in there, at least mentioning outright for PPE and cleaning supplies. Obviously, we had the money from the CARES Act 1 that was passed into law last March, and then we had the Consolidated Appropriations Act at the end of the year. Really, there's still a lot of the money from CARES Act 1 that still needs to funnel down. As of last month, saw a news item that there was still about $1 billion that had to be spent from CARES Act 1. Really haven't seen the Consolidated Appropriations Act money start funneling down yet. In fact, the school bus contractors are still awaiting their slice of the $2 billion pie from that CERTS Act that was contained in the Consolidated Appropriations Act. But like you said, a lot of money, nearly $130 billion. It's more than double what was set aside for education in the last two relief packages. Some of the things that are jumping out here, there is some summer enrichment money to the tune of over $1.2 billion. And hearing from some folks who are looking to really ramp up their summer school because of this whole COVID-19 experience that everybody's been in, a lot of school districts are trying to utilize that time for their students to catch up. And of course, transportation is going to be involved in that. So some folks out there are looking forward to getting some money for that. There is also some state grants in the tune of over $2.5 billion for special ed and about $800 million for homeless students. So a lot of that money will be going to the classroom, no doubt, but certainly over the coming weeks and months, we'll be peeling back the layers of the onion to find out how transportation can get involved.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting when I heard Joe Biden talk last Thursday. I heard school bus drivers uttered across his lips about getting the vaccine and, the vaccine being available to all adults, I guess 18 and older. He's going to direct
16 and older. Yeah.
16 and older?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, I guess anybody who's 16 or older can get the vaccine by May 1st. Or, I guess we'll see what supplies look like based if you're opening the floodgates. What does that look like? But yeah, and, if you're taking the multi-stage shot, you have to wait basically 30 days and then get another shot, and then you got to wait a little longer for the full efficacy to kick in. But, that can only mean a good thing. So I have a feeling we're going to be full tilt. School's going to be reopened. Fall, we'll be running again. It'll start to feel a little more like normal. What do you think, Ryan?
Yeah, well, President Biden said that to expect by July 4th for everything to, quote unquote, be back to normal. So that is certainly the hope. Again, we'll see if the federal government can hit that May 1st deadline, if you will, to get everybody vaccinated, or at least everybody who wants to get the vaccine will have it available to them. That's the goal. Certainly the third one-shot Johnson & Johnson vaccine has kind of bolstered that, shot in the arm, if you will. So certainly we have 3 vaccines now. And, as we gear up for a very busy fall here at STN with 3 at least conferences in person, looking forward to getting that vaccine so that we can get out there and be amongst all you people out there, all our friends. And it's been a long time. It's be very good to see everybody.
Excellent. Well, shifting gears, Ryan, let's talk about conferences a little bit. We are working diligently on our Green Bus Summit, which is registration is now open. That is April 20th through the 22nd. And as you might guessed it, we're talking all about going green, everything having to do with that, school bus electrification, propane, CNG, renewable propane, clean diesel. There's so much to kind of take in, all the information, stakeholders on that. And Ryan, you're cooking up a schedule for us. I know we have announced last week that we had Tucker Perkins, the CEO of PERC, which is the Propane Education Research Council, who's going to keynote for us. And then we also received confirmation last week that Phil Horlock, the president and CEO of Bluebird, will also be a keynote for us at the Green Bus Summit. So really excited to have both those guys join us and share some of their knowledge and kind of information on where they think the school bus industry is going and how alternative energy is going to play a major role. Also, Ryan, I know we had sent out an email to our audience announcing the first ever STN Green Bus Summit Fleet Award. So we have a call for nominations out now. If you know anybody, public school district, private school district, anybody that's doing anything innovative in the world of green, we'd love you to nominate a friend, nominate a peer, a customer, whoever it is. We want to hear. We want to look at a lot of different nominees to consider who would be eligible to win this great award. So we have 4 categories. We have under 100 school buses and over 100 school buses for both public and private. So 4 different opportunities to win the prestigious STN Green Bus Summit Fleet Award. So encourage you guys to fill that out. If you go to greenbussummit.com, you find the award, you click nominate. That is where you can go to fill out that form. So excited to present recognition to a lot of innovative school districts out there that are kind of spearheading great green projects. Ryan, you want to share with us any new classes you've maybe added to Green Bus Summit lately?
Yeah, we're working on a session looking at batteries. So talking about batteries for medium duty, recycling programs, second use, a lot of emerging trends that we're seeing. Also looking at another emerging trend of selling low carbon fuel standard credits, something that has heretofore been an avenue for vehicle manufacturers or fuel providers. We have heard a lot about selling low carbon credits over the past decade or so. This is now something that's available to school districts, at least in a couple states, but definitely as more and more fleets go the zero emissions route, go electric fleet, seeing the opportunities for this to expand. Also too, what green maintenance looks like. We've talked a lot in the past about the effects on costs and how going to a propane school bus or certainly an electric school bus can drastically reduce maintenance costs. But there's also a lot of training involved. Certainly as we're talking electric school buses, moving from that internal combustion engine that so many technicians out there have been, working on for decades. And that's how they came up as kids, working on their dad's, diesel tractor or whatever, working on diesel cars and trucks, and then school buses. But now, take away that internal combustion engine, and it's a brand new animal. So a lot of training and a lot of safety training involved. So just a kind of a look under the hood there of some of the things that are getting planned.
Excellent. Looking forward to that. All right, Ryan, I'm going to shift over. I've got a great interview lined up with Mr. Kevin Mest. We'll be right back. Well, I want to welcome to the School Transportation Nation a good friend of mine, Mr. Kevin Mest, who is the Senior Vice President of Zonar for Passenger Services. Kevin, welcome to the podcast.
Great to be here, Tony.
Excellent. For those of you that don't know Kevin, he has been in school transportation since 1985. He did a stretch with Laidlaw for 22 years. When they were acquired, ended up at First Student for a few years, and then ended up also as the Illinois Central School Bus Company's CEO from 2011 to 2014. So he has got a lot of history in operations, transportation. He's seen a lot over his tenure, and I thought we'd bring bring him on here to give us a little snapshot of kind of where things were back in the day in 85 and where we're headed, hopefully in maybe 2025, right? So, Kevin, I want to dive right in. We've had a lot of action going on with stimulus passing last week. Joe Biden signs it into law. We've got, 100 billion plus, right? 130 billion for K through 8 schools for reopening. Technology is going to be a big part of that conversation. And I'd love to hear your opinions on where things are headed, what you're seeing. Zonar's got an incredible stack of technology products to serve the school transportation community. You've got a lot of new things pipelined that have dropped recently. What does that landscape look like right now?
Yeah, great question, Tony. I think, first of all, I think in the industry, we're moving at a more accelerated pace. As you mentioned, I think there was two things that really impacted the cycle. One was just the life cycle of buses. So we made investments kind of with technology as we replaced buses. And then also for contractors, they looked at those revenue contract cycles that were typically 5 years or more before they made those technology investments. And as more technology has come on as an OEM option, I think it has kind of in the value of those solutions, people aren't just taking that wait and see. And with the Biden dollars, it's even going to create more resources to accelerate some of those investments. So, we were simplistically, believe it or not, in 1985, ordering a radio on a school bus was an option. It wasn't even a standard. So we've gone from very simple track and trace, what happened, to why did it happen, to now when will it happen, and being much more predictive about those types of solutions. So we're really seeing the maturation of the market. So we're excited to be part of that as Zonar. As you mentioned, Tony, we've got a lot of great solutions, and there's a few that I'd like to talk about that really tie into this kind of return to work environment, if I may.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, so thinking about that, what we're really seeing right now is, and I hate to even use the word post-pandemic. We're not out of the pandemic, but we are returning to school because we're starting to reach those levels of safety. But there's always going to be that recognition that, this is not the first and last time we'll see these types of incidents that require us to pay more attention to where our students are, just from a general safety standpoint. And then if there is a virus condition like there is today and will be even of concern in the fall, the ability to trace students' activities. So with our ZPass solution, which we've been a core product for many years, we can tell the administration and parents will know if a student turns up with the COVID virus, they're going to want to know the basic question, where was that student? Not only in the school, but that extension of the school on the bus. So what bus did they ride? What time? Who else was on the bus with that student? So you can answer those questions. So having that information is really invaluable to administrators and parents to know, parents whose children weren't impacted, but potentially could have been, they can go in and get tested then.
Wonderful. And, can you talk a little more? Obviously, the student ridership component, also, you can kind of tether together the, parent communication component that you kind of touched on a little bit. What are we talking about in terms of like push through to parents? Like what kind of communication messages are going out from schools? How much? What's the volume? Have you guys seen just a massive increase in volume, or have people been requesting to have this parent communication application to keep parents more informed than ever? Because I feel like in a world of information and connectivity, it's almost like a no-brainer to add this to your fleet. So, what's that looking like right now at Zonar?
Yeah, tremendous demand. People's expectation, we all have apps on our own phones. If we're taking public transit, we can see where's the bus, or taking Uber or any of those types of transportation. So on a school bus, our ZPass solution it's now like many solutions. We've moved it from a dispatch area or just to administrators out into the parents' hands through the app. So with our ZPass app, the parent will have the ability, and it's called My View. So you have a My View of both student tracking, so you can see your child, what time, when, and where they got on the bus and off the bus, but also with the bus tracking feature, you can see before your child has even gotten on the bus. And if you've already left the home, you can see where the bus is and know the bus is on its way and have a sense of knowledge where the bus is and if it's on time or running late. So that communication piece is particularly with, I think the schools are reinventing themselves with their transportation systems. You're going to continue to see that. I think things like snow days are a thing of the past. Schools have learned to do virtual learning. So in the past, we all sat there and hoped for a heavy snow and when we were all kids and hoping school would get canceled. I don't think transportation may get canceled, but you're still going to school, but virtually. So the ability to communicate that very quickly to parents, provide other means of communication through this app, I think has become even more pronounced. And we're seeing a tremendous uptick in requests for that. And so we're really excited about it.
Wonderful. And, what kind of services does Zonar offer in terms of grant applications, funding? Because I think, it's a bit of an enigma out there, too. How do I get the money to pay for this technology? So what do you guys have to offer school districts and contractors that might be interested in reaching out and accessing funds?
Yeah, I think, there's multiple sources. And first of all, like anything in technology, the cost has come down. And some of the solutions on the hardware side, so if you buy a Thomasville bus, our box is already, the basic telematics unit is already on the bus. So you already have it. So if you have a late model Thomas bus, you may not realize it, but you already have a Zonar box there. You just need to activate it. So it might be something you might look into. The second thing is we have really creative financing. I'll call it financing, where much like other types of solutions, you just pay for the hardware as you go as part of your monthly service. So no money down. It's called a bundled, and it's just paid. It's part of so we remove that hurdle. And then beyond that, just in terms of overall, ongoing costs and cost of ownership, there are grants. And so for any listeners that are part of NSTA as a contractor or part of NAPT as a school district, one of our legacy employees, Don Carnahan, who many know, we have a grant established in his name to help schools take advantage of the technology.
Wonderful. I think you guys have another program or group you work with called Learn, Design, Apply. Can you give us a little more on those folks and what they do for you?
Yeah, it probably take more time than we have today, but simply it's a third party that we can access a multitude of resources for grant. And sourcing and finding grants is a time-consuming process. So they basically take that effort out of the equation. And so our sales professionals will help match applicants up to available grants. And I should also mention, many of these products have a payback in their own right, whether it's either improved safety or operating costs, whether it's labor savings or vehicle maintenance or your safety record. You're going to get not just an intangible, but you're going to see tangible hard dollar savings that help fund those services in and of themselves. So a great payback.
Got it. Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. Let's shift gears a little bit. Let's talk about where you see the industry going. Where is school bus headed? I mean, school bus electrification seems to be the hottest topic out there. People are all in this information discovery. They're looking at it. You're starting to see headline after headline. Biden administration has a very green, forward-thinking approach. There's some new active legislation like the Clean School Bus Act, which would get $1 billion out to school buses for electrification. That's interesting. You guys, maybe predictive maintenance. Are there any things that you're seeing on the horizon that maybe people should be considering or maybe be preparing themselves for into the future?
Yeah, well, I think that really the core of it, Tony, is to have a very purposeful process to first identify what are my requirements, what is important to me. And what we've seen in the industry is kind of this race to the next shiny object. And so if you talk to most school districts or contractors, it's like, when that bus shows up in the yard this summer, I got to spend an unbelievable amount of man hours hanging on it, all sorts of devices, whether it's cameras, child checkmate, on-spot chains, or other forms of technology. And it's a huge lift. And so what you have is kind of an ad hoc, disparate system that are all independent of one another. And so what evolved for many schools and operators is this end result that's by default and not by design. So what I would really encourage people to do is start with a thoughtful design. What are my core requirements? I want GPS. Okay, got that. I want the ability to have some good telematics reporting on that so I know what to do with that information, right? What do I have for safety? Is it inspection, like with electronic vehicle inspection tool? What do I want for student tracking with like ZPass? What do I want for bus tracking with MyView? How about, do I want to use a tablet in the bus to accomplish some of these things? And when I'm building that design, then what you need to think about is, are those all integrated? And all they do, and do they function with a data sharing so they work in unison and you're not duplicating SIM cards and other devices so you can do it in an efficient manner. So it's much like building a house. I mean, really spec this out in a way that, and you may not do all of this, I should say, right? It's a plan and you have a strategy of the key things that you want to accomplish, and then you work towards that plan over some capital project budget or operating budget over time. And that's one of the things that Zonar does really well. I mean, we have great people that can be that trusted advisor to walk you through that. We're not going to sell you the next shiny object. If it's not working for you, I'll take it back. I want you to use it and I want you to get value. And that's really what we really pride ourselves on. And in really providing that end-to-end solution with all of our partners, whether it's routing partners, whether it's companies like TransFinder or Bus Patrol, or many other partners that we work closely with like Bike Curve, we're going to bring the right resources to the table that we can work with. And we're not proprietary to any one hardware. We want to have that open system so that you get what works for you, not what works for Zonar, just to buy something from Zonar, but what's really going to help you achieve your goals.
Wonderful. Thanks, Kevin, for those great pearls of wisdom. Appreciate you coming on the podcast and joining us today. Really great having you.
Hey, great to be here. Anytime. I look forward to when we get together in person. And again, thank you.
Wonderful. We've got Ryan Gray talking with Casey Joe Foster from Birmingham City Schools next.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want to welcome to the School Transportation Nation stage right now, Casey Joe Foster, Director of Transportation at Birmingham City Schools in beautiful Alabama. Casey, thank you for joining us today.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
So, COVID-19, boy, you guys got a story to tell there in Birmingham. Evidently, you guys had some interesting startup and start and stop again. What's been going on there with COVID?
We definitely did. We did not start school in August face-to-face. We pushed the start date back to September so that we could get more of the devices in for our one-to-one program that we did. Then we resumed school in a face-to-face environment on November the 1st. And we had a blended model when we did. We were there for 3 weeks and then shut it back down again because of community spread. And then we just started back face-to-face in a blended model again on March the 1st.
So you're pretty busy right now. What were some of the big lessons that you learned from this start, stop, start? How has this impacted your drivers? How has it impacted your budget?
The drivers have been very frustrated because they've had to learn how to be flexible. A lot of the drivers have jobs during the middle of the day, and that has affected their ability to do the other jobs because when we weren't doing face-to-face instruction and delivering students, we switched over to delivering meals. And we started doing that last March, right after the shutdown. So their feeding was being done during the middle of the day, and that affected their ability to work other jobs. And for those that this was their primary job because of benefits, they had to make a choice, and it was a very difficult choice for them. Luckily, we were able to retain most of our employees and keep them working. We've had to adapt several times. Last March was very challenging. We had 3 days to figure out how we were going to feed 22,500 students. And the parameters that the school system set for us was that no student would have to walk more than 1 mile or cross any hazard such as railroad tracks or major roadway in order to get to the food. and we've done 62 feeding sites across Birmingham in 3 days. We used TransFinder, our Route Finder Pro, to look at where our current feeding sites were. Then we were able to do a walkout zone of 1 mile, and we were able to see where our dead zones were. After seeing where our dead zones were, then one of the supervisors in my department and I were out on Wi-Fi hotspots on our laptops using Route Finder and Samsara for GPS and looking at satellite imagery to figure out where we could potentially put feeding sites. We wanted to make sure that it was a safe place to walk to, safe place for a bus to get in and out, safe place for students to walk so that they weren't crossing at the top of a hill or at the bottom of the hill or, blind corners. Or it was very challenging to figure out where we were going to put those feeding sites in 3 days.
Mm-hmm. And I understand that you guys have about 28 propane-powered school buses, and you utilize those buses to deliver a lot of those meals. That ended up saving you guys money that you ended up needing later on, because unlike a lot of districts, transportation anyways, there in Birmingham, hasn't been able to use this CARES Act money for PPE and cleaning and whatnot. You've basically saved money by operating those propane buses and found that budget to kind of, meet your needs.
Correct. So the school system, they used the CARES funding to purchase things such as PPEs for the entire school system. But the cleaning supplies and things such as that, sanitizing, chemicals, we just did that out of our existing budget. And as you mentioned, we have 28 propane buses and continuing to expand that fleet over the next 7 years until we are 100% propane. But we saw significant savings by operating the propane buses because we were able to save somewhere in the neighborhood of about $2 to $2.25 per gallon of fuel. And then it also didn't have the same effect on the environment as a diesel bus does. And so we were able to leverage our propane buses and use those exclusively on these routes so that we were able to find cost savings.
And you mentioned that you're looking to finally get your fleet completely 100% propane in the next 7 years. How many buses are you running total?
We run approximately 140 buses.
Okay.
We have a purchase plan, and over the next 7 years, we will purchase the remainder of those buses to be all propane.
Okay. And then, speaking of technology, so you highlighted a couple of instances of utilizing existing technology in a new way. We've heard a lot of that from your peers across the nation that have identified existing technology to help with this new COVID-19 reality. Are there other aspects of the technology that Birmingham is using that has helped in COVID?
I would say that probably the biggest thing that we have found is that we have been able to kind of push the pause button in our operations to be able to reinvest in technology. We're currently in the process of putting in student tracking for all of our schools. All of our students don't have ID badges. So we have bought ID badges for all of our students. We've put in the badge scanners on all of our buses and working on integrating that technology in so that way we're able to see what students are on the bus. And kind of what was the catalyst for that was contact tracing. I don't know that we really used our technology differently, slightly differently, but not incredibly differently than what we already did. But what it did was it showed a light on areas that we weren't utilizing technology that we really could be, and caused us to look into that and other ways that we can be more efficient.
Okay. And in terms of your budget, I know you said that you've been lucky in one respect that it really hasn't hit you too badly yet, COVID-19. But now that your guys are back in school for the rest of this school year, hopefully, and we're hearing a lot of good things about the vaccines being available to all here by May. And, hopefully this will be or will mean a regular startup for you guys and everybody nationwide come, the 21-22 school year. But looking forward, in terms of your budget, are there any anxieties that you're having as you're looking down the road and thinking maybe about implementing new technology, keeping in mind that, you haven't gotten any of this federal funding yet, maybe you will, to transportation? the way that your funding model is set up there in Alabama, what are you anticipating, or maybe what are you looking forward to or looking down the road at in terms of funding?
So the nice thing with Birmingham City is that they've been very supportive with the technology that we've been looking at putting in. And so I don't foresee any budget challenges with that. I've already, as most people have around the country, began having those budget discussions and in the process of finalizing the upcoming budget. So I'm not seeing any budget challenges. There's definitely some concern about what things are going to look like going forward as far as the need for PPEs, the need for continuing sanitizing. We go through approximately a 55-gallon drum of sanitizing spray with my spray crew that sprays the buses twice a day, every week. And so that's not an inexpensive thing. And if we have to continue doing that over a long period of time, that does erode the budget that we've been able to save and use for those things. However, I'm sure that Birmingham City, as they have been supporting the purchase of PPEs and safety equipment that's needed, such as sanitizing spray.
Okay. And in terms of your drivers, you mentioned them a little bit earlier, that there was some initial inflexibility there to kind of, roll with the punches, but everyone's kind of come on board now, it sounds like. Still, driver shortages are affecting everybody. How has that impacted you, and kind of, what are you forecasting, if you can, down the road in terms of those shortages, both, behind the wheel and in the garage?
So we've been very blessed in Birmingham that the drivers have bought in, that they understand there is a need for flexibility. The drivers care deeply for their students and their families, and so they've been willing to do the flexibility that's necessary. The biggest challenge that we have seen is whenever someone does contract the virus and has not been socially distancing like they're supposed to. I had one driver come up positive and it cost 14 employees because they weren't social distancing. That's been our biggest challenge in this. As far as personnel, we have been very, very blessed in Birmingham that we are not experiencing the driver shortage that everyone else is. We have actually seen an influx of drivers during COVID-19. 2 years ago, we were 34 drivers short, and today we are 2 drivers short. So
What's your secret sauce there on that?
Driver appreciation is what I really chalk it up to. I interact with my employees. My assistant director interacts with the employees. We don't go shut ourselves in our office. We care about them. We go visit the families when they're in the hospital. We go to funerals. We call them and check and see if there's anything they need. The drivers have input in our department. I chalk it up to the driver retention to employee appreciation.
Sounds like you guys got a family atmosphere there.
Very much so.
Yeah. Hopefully everybody out there is listening to that, because certainly I know a lot of folks are hurting big time with that driver shortage. So take it from Casey Joe Foster here, treat them like family. Before we go, want to bring up vaccines a little bit more. Some of the news this past week, President Joe Biden said that there should be enough vaccines for all adults ages 16 and over by May. Certainly, there's been some good progress with those vaccines coming to market. Johnson & Johnson had one, the most recent. But, there's been a lot of talk about getting the education staff, school bus drivers vaccinated. Where are you guys right now in the whole vaccination of drivers and staff?
Any of my employees that wanted to be vaccinated were included with all of the teachers and administrators. We partnered with a local hospital, UAB, and UAB took our email distribution list and contacted all of the employees via email, and they were able to sign up on a portal. And all of my employees that wanted to be vaccinated have already received the second shot.
Good deal. All right. Well, I know you guys got a lot of work ahead of you, but it's great to be back in person. I'm sure that your drivers appreciate seeing all the kids again. Best of luck to you for the rest of the school year. And I want to thank you again for coming on and sharing your experiences with us.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Y'all have a good evening.
Really appreciate Kevin Mest from Zonar and Casey Joe Foster from Birmingham City Schools joining us today. Lots of really great information. A special thank you to TransFinder and Zonar for sponsoring today's episode. Don't forget, friends, sign up for that Green Bus Summit. Go to greenbussummit.com for more information. And don't forget to save the date for STN Expo Indianapolis, October 1st through the 5th. We've got our Transporting Students with Disabilities and Special Needs Conference happening November 17th through the 22nd. You can check it out at tsdconference.com. And last but not least, STN Expo Reno. Save the date on that one, December 4th through the 10th. More info there at stnexpo.com. Want to make sure everybody visits the STN website, stnonline.com, for all the latest news and analysis on COVID-19, stimulus funding, everything having to do with the school bus industry. If you're interested in that kind of information, we got you covered. Thanks to all the listeners. Subscribe, stream, review our podcast. We love those 5-star reviews. Check us out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. All right, nation, we love you. We'll see you next week.